morning, everyone. Welcome to another interesting session of physics. Today, Mrs. Rama Kalyani, PGT Physics of TSMS Pudur is with us to throw more light about ray optics and various optical instruments. In the previous class, you have studied about refraction of light through a prism, and dispersion of light. In this class, you will study about the interesting concept of physics, that is rainbow. Children, you all enjoy a rainbow. So how is rainbow formed? What is the physics principle lying behind the formation of rainbow? And you'll also learn about the various optical instruments. The best optical instrument, the national optical instrument, is the human eye. So we'll learn about human eye and simple telescope and various other telescopes also. So over to Madam for more details about this concept. Madam, please take over the session.
Thank you, Madam. Hello, children. How are you all? So today we are back again with the continuation of the interesting topic of physics, ray optics and optical instruments. Yes, children, as you can see on the screen right now, we are going to have a very colorful session today. Today we will be learning about the formation of a rainbow, and we are going to learn about the working of some of the optical instruments. So children, before going to the session, let us see what you all have learned in the previous session. Children, in the previous session, you had learned about the prism. Children, if you remember, you had learned about the definition of a prism, how the prism is able to disperse white light into 7 different colors. Yes? And then you have seen how when light gets refracted from prism, it is getting separated into 7 different colors. You might have noticed that the red light bends the least or deviates the least, and the violet light bends the highest. That is, the red color light has minimum deviation, whereas the violet color light has the maximum deviation. Yes, children? Then you might have learned, you might have remembered the refractive index of the material of a prism. You have also done a problem on that. What is the refractive index of the material of a prism, children? Can anyone say? Yes. N is equals to sine of A plus dm by 2 by sine of A by 2. This is the formula for the refractive index of a prism, where A is the angle of the prism and dm is the angle of minimum deviation through the prism. And then we have learned about dispersion of light. Yes, we have begun with the prism to learn about the dispersion of light. So what is dispersion of light, children? Dispersion of light is the separation of light into its constituent colors. Yes, we have seen the Vibgyor pattern: violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, and red. Yes, the 7 colors of the white light get separated when they are passing through the prism. This phenomena is called as the dispersion of light. We have also seen the angular dispersion and the dispersive power of a material. Yes, children? So now, let us see what all we are going to learn today. In today's session, we will be first learning about the natural phenomena due to sunlight, laying emphasis on the formation of the rainbow. Yes, children? We know there are many natural phenomena occurring due to the sunlight. The colors of the sky, the various colors of the sky that you see. Yes? And we are laying our emphasis on the formation of the rainbow. And then we are going to learn about certain optical instruments, children. So first we will be seeing about the natural optical device that we are blessed with. Yes, the eye that we are blessed with. The simple microscope, the compound microscope, and then we shall be studying about the telescope also. Okay, children? So now let us see some natural phenomena due to sunlight. Children, in general, how does the sky appear to us? In general, on a clear day, what do you see? A beautiful blue colored sky. Yes, children, when the sky is clear, mostly in the most part of the day, the sky appears to be blue. Yes, children, this is because of a natural phenomena due to the scattering of sunlight. Okay, children, due to the scattering of sunlight. Then we have the rainbow itself. Yes, without the sunlight, you can't imagine the rainbow to be forming. Such a treat to our eyes the sunlight gives us, isn't it, children? Look at this beautiful reddish colored sky, isn't it, children? When do you get to see this type of sky? Yes, usually we see this in the mornings or in the evenings. That is, during the sunrise and during the sunset, the sky appears to be red in color or orange in color. This is again due to the scattering of light. Okay, children? And again, not only the sky, even the water bodies also appear to us in blue color. Yes, children? Once again, this is due to the sunlight, the presence of sunlight. Is it clear, children? So these are just a few natural phenomena that occur due to sunlight. Okay, children? So we are really blessed with a beautiful, beautiful nature. Isn't it, children? So let us try to understand one of this today, that is the formation of a rainbow. We will learn about the formation of a rainbow today, children. So what do you think a rainbow is? How is it that a bow appears from nowhere in the sky and it is having 7 colors? Where did we learn about the 7 colors previously, children? Yes, when we are incidenting white light onto the prism, it is separating the white light into 7 components. That is, the white light is getting dispersed, right? That means the rainbow is also due to the dispersion of sunlight. Okay, children? The rainbow is also due to the dispersion of sunlight. Okay? What could be the reason? The reason is nothing but the water drops present in the atmosphere. Yes, children, a rainbow is formed due to the dispersion of sunlight by the water drops in the atmosphere. So, is it just so simple? Just a dispersion? No, children. A rainbow formation is usually a combined effect of dispersion, reflection, and refraction of sunlight by spherical water droplets of rain. Okay, children? So, the sunlight is undergoing 3 steps: dispersion, refraction, and then reflection in order to form a rainbow. Is it clear, children? The formation of a rainbow is usually a 3-step process. Here is our rainbow. Okay, children? Beautiful, isn't it? Now let us go into the physics behind the formation of this rainbow. Children, we usually have the sun. Yes, children? What else do we need for the formation of a rainbow? Yes, we need rain, obviously. We need to have water droplets present in the atmosphere so that when sunlight passes through these water drops, they get dispersed and the water drops are dispersing the forming a. Is it just that? Yes, there is a condition. The condition is that when the sun is on one part of the sky, the rain should be falling on the other part of the sky, right? That means suppose it is raining on the eastern part of the sky, then it should be sunny. There should be a sun on the west. That is the evening time. Okay, children, that is the evening time. Is it clear, children? That means the rain and the sun has to be in the opposite direction. So when you are seeing the rainbow, your back is facing the sun. Okay, children? When you are seeing the rainbow in front of you, the sun is behind you. Yes, children, that is the condition. So we have sun, we have the rain. Where is the rainbow? Here is the rainbow. Okay, children? So the condition for observing a rainbow is that the sun should be shining in one part of the sky while it is raining in the other part. Okay, children, the sun is on the one side and it is raining on the other side, then rainbow will be forming. Just look at this pretty image, children. A girl is standing here observing a rainbow. Yes, children. See, children, this part is called as the horizon. That is where the girl sees the end of earth. Okay, where the girl sees the end of the land, earth. She sees the rainbow at the end of the horizon. Okay, children, at the horizon. And the sun is behind her, right? The sun is behind her, and hence she is able to see the rainbow in front of her. Okay, children? Now, children, let us imagine this is a raindrop. Now, what happens when sunlight falls on this raindrop? When sunlight falls on this raindrop, it is entering from one medium to another medium, isn't it, children? The sunlight is entering from air medium to water medium. So what should happen? Yes, it should refract inside the water surface. Yes, children. See, it is entering from air medium, going into water medium. That means it has to refract, it has to bend. Isn't it, children? It has to bend. And also, because it is going from one medium to another medium, it is going into a water medium, there may be a chance of dispersion also. Why not? Let us see. So here you can see that the white colored sunlight is getting refracted inside the water drop, and it is also getting dispersed at the same time. That is, dispersion as well as refraction are taking place together. Okay, children? And the red colored light bends less and the violet color light bends more. Okay, children? The violet color light having lesser speed bends more, whereas the red colored light, which is having more wavelength and more speed, bends little. Okay, children? At this, what is happening at this point? At this point, when they are hitting the surface, at this point when they are hitting the inner surface of the water droplet, what is happening here? If the angle here is greater than 48 degrees with the normal, this is the refraction, the refracted ray. If the refracted ray is making an angle greater than 48 degrees with the normal at this point, then total internal reflection will take place. Total internal reflection will take place. Okay, children? See here. Once again, the ray, the red colored light has reflected into the same surface, same medium, instead of coming out. Same with the violet colored light. It has reflected again in the same medium instead of coming out. So here, total internal reflection is taking place. And now, at the surface, these two light rays will come out. Once again, refraction is taking place because they are coming from water medium to air medium. Yes, children? They are coming from water medium to air medium. Once again, they will be getting refracted. Okay? Now, depending upon the orientation of the sunlight, the violet light makes an angle of 40 degrees and the red colored light making an angle of 42 degrees are visible to our eyes. Yes, children? See, children, there may be many number of water droplets, there may be many number of dispersions taking place, but only this set of readings or this set of values are visible to the human eye. Okay, children? When sunlight enters the raindrop, it gets refracted. This causes the different wavelengths to get separated. Okay, children, now you can see the red colored light, the violet colored light, and in between all the wavelengths are getting separated. The component wavelengths strike the inner surface of the drop. Yes, children, we have seen that. And what is happening next? The critical angle for a water drop is 48 degrees inside. And if the angle of refraction inside the water drop is greater than 48 degrees. So we have seen that if the angle of refraction is greater than 48 degrees, then total internal reflection occurs. Why am I saying angle of refraction there, children? Because the ray is the refracted ray inside. Okay, it is the refracted ray inside. It is hitting the other side of the inner surface. So if the refracted ray is making 48 degrees on the other side, on the inner surface, then total internal reflection occurs. The reflected light is refracted again as it comes out of the surface or the drop. So we have seen the third step. When the light is getting refracted, it comes out of the surface or the drop with angles 40 degrees and 42 degrees. Violet light emerges at 40 degrees and the red colored light emerges at 42 degrees. Then what about other colors? Any guesses, children? Yes, obviously they should be lying in between these two values. Okay, because all the other colors are between red and violet. All their angles should be in between 40 degrees and 42 degrees. Now children, rainbows can be two types, primary and secondary. Let us see the formation of a primary rainbow now. We have one water drop and then we have another water drop. Okay children? So let us imagine sunlight entering or being incident on the first water drop, getting refracted inside, getting total internal reflection, and then coming out in this manner. Yes, children. Children, notice something here. The red colored light is below and the violet colored light is above. Recollect how a rainbow looks like. Okay, children, this is very important for us. Recollect how a rainbow looks like. Okay, here what you are seeing is the red colored light is below and the violet colored light is above. Okay, now we have the second drop also. It is getting refracted, internally reflected and refracted again. Yes, children. Now here also violet color is above and the red color is below. Okay. Now we are the observer here, observing the rainbow. Okay. What can we see here, children? Here, if you see, the violet colored light due to the first drop and the red colored light due to the second drop are going out of vision for us. Okay, children, we are able to see only this area. Okay, children, we are able to see this region. Okay, and this is going above our view and this is going below our view. Okay, so we are unable to see the violet colored light of the first drop and the red colored lights of the second drop, right? That is why when we see a rainbow, we see the red color above and the violet color below. Okay, children? These are the angles made 40 degrees and 42 degrees with the red colored light. In this condition only, we will be able to see the rainbow. Okay, children? Children, the formation of a rainbow is not because of one or two drops, but because of millions of water droplets which are able to give us this condition. Okay, children? Millions of water droplets which are able to give us the violet light at 40 degrees and the red colored light at 42 degrees. So all these put together, we have the beautiful rainbow. It is not just a formation because of one or two drops. So children, this is the condition of a primary rainbow where we have the red colored light above and the violet colored light below and all the other lights in between them. Okay, children? Children, have you ever come across, so in a primary rainbow, red color appears above and the violet appears below. Children, have you ever come across two rainbows? Yes. Observe this image carefully, children. Observe this image carefully. There's a rainbow here. Yes, very bright and very beautiful. But there is another one here, hiding behind, isn't it? Children, this is called as the secondary rainbow. Okay, children, this is our primary rainbow. You can clearly see the red color above and the blue colors below, isn't it? And if you notice the secondary rainbow, it is not very bright, but you can clearly understand that the red color is below and the blue colors are above. It is something like a mirror image of the primary rainbow. Okay. So the colors are inverted there. Okay, children. And it is also not as bright as this rainbow. Now let us see what is the reason for the formation, first of all, of this secondary rainbow. Okay. And why is it that the colors are reversed and why it is dimmer compared to the first rainbow. Okay. So children, this is how a secondary rainbow is formed. Okay, children. For the formation of secondary rainbow, at times what happens is the incident ray after the first refraction gets internally reflected, once again gets internally reflected, that is 2 times. Total internal reflection is taking place 2 times here. This happens in certain situations. The incident light getting refracted in the raindrop, okay, and total internal reflection here, another total internal reflection here. Yes, children? And when they are coming outside, what is happening, children? The reversal takes place. The red colored light here and the violet or the blue colored lights here, because of the 2 reflections here. It is because of the 2 reflections. Okay, children? Here also same condition we will see, children. 2 reflections. Because of these 2 reflections, here we are getting the violet colored above and the red colored below. And what are the angles, children? Here the angles are 50 degrees for the red colored light and 53 degrees for the violet colored light. That means all the other colors will be between 50 to 53 degrees. Then children, what could be the reason for the low intensity? It is because when the light is suffering 2 reflections, some of its intensity is lost inside the raindrops only. That is the reason its brightness is lesser compared to the primary rainbow. So when light rays undergo 2 internal reflections inside a raindrop, a secondary rainbow is formed. Okay? When light rays undergo 2 internal reflections inside a rainbow, a secondary rainbow is formed. Usually it is higher compared to the primary rainbow. Here it is a 4-step process. Yes, children, because we have 2 reflections, there is 1 step added here. It is a 4-step process. They are dispersion at the first surface, reflection, that is total internal reflection again, and then diffraction. So totally it involves 4 steps. The intensity of light is reduced at the second reflection, and hence the secondary rainbow is fainter than the primary rainbow. Okay, children, as I told you, because 2 reflections are taking place here, the light is losing its intensity, some of its intensity inside the water drop itself. Therefore, the secondary rainbow is fainter than the primary rainbow. The order of the colors is also reversed because of double reflection. Isn't it, children? Because of reflection, what happens? We know the common property of reflection is inversion. Yes or no? So order of the colors is also reversed. Right, children? I hope you have understood the formation of the primary and the secondary rainbows. It is very, very important for us in the examination point of view, children. And now let us go for the next important topic, that is the optical instruments, which is the second part of this chapter. Children, what do you think? What comes into your mind when you think about optical instruments? What all do we know about the optical instruments? Yes, the telescope, microscope. You might have seen the periscope. In your school days, you might have made projects like periscope, kaleidoscope. Yes, children, all these are nothing but these are optical devices or optical instruments. So many different optical instruments have been designed utilizing the properties of light. So light behaves differently. It can reflect, it can refract. Now we can see it can disperse also, it can scatter. So light is behaving in different manners when it is encountering different type of media. Yes. So when light is passing from one medium to another medium, it is behaving in a certain manner. When light is coming back into the same medium, it is behaving in a different manner. Yes, children? So depending upon the angle of incidence and everything, light has its own way. Okay. So scientists have made use of this nature of light and the nature of the reflecting and refracting surfaces, and they have designed many interesting optical instruments. So some of them like periscope, kaleidoscope, binoculars, microscopes, and telescopes. Our eye is an optical device which nature has gifted us. Yes, children, we should be blessed to be a part of nature, that we have this eye. What could we do without it? Okay, children. So you should also take care of the eyes. It is our first responsibility. So just small images of optical instruments. These are the binoculars, the microscope, and the telescope. Now children, let us understand first of all about our eye. Yes, children. This is the structure of our eye. Okay, children, this is the structure of our eye. Just how it appears. So let us see what we need to learn importantly. Children, the cornea is the upper covering. Okay, the cornea is the upper covering of our eyeball. Okay, and this is the pupil, what we call in Telugu as the kanupapa. Okay, children, the small black colored hole that you see. Yes, children. And this is called as the iris. These portions are called as the iris. Okay. And then this is our lens. What shape is this, children? What is the shape of our eye lens? Yes, convex lens, converging lens. The eye lenses are convex shaped. Okay. And then see, children, these are the ciliary muscles. Okay, children, these are the ciliary muscles. You can see something that's like the suspensory ligaments here, children. Inside the suspensory ligaments, you have the ciliary muscles. These ciliary muscles are responsible for holding our eye lens, and they help us in the expansion and contraction of the eye lens. Okay, children, like suppose when you want to look in darkness, okay, what you do, you make your eyes bigger. Yes, children, you make your eyes bigger. That is called expansion. How are we able to do this? It is because of the presence of the ciliary muscles. Okay, and suppose you want to see something, suddenly a bright light is there and you are searching for something. Okay, sometimes what you do, children, you make your eyes very, very small. Yes, children, that is to avoid unnecessary light getting into your eyes. Okay, so the ciliary muscles have this kind of power where they can adjust the focal length of your eye lens. Okay, children, the focal length of the eye lens can be adjusted. Okay, children, so we'll learn more about that. This is the structure of our eye, and most importantly, we have the retina here, the yellow colored screen here. What you're seeing, children, this is where the image forms. This is called as the retina. Okay, children, retina acts as a screen to the images that we are seeing. Okay, whatever objects we are seeing, the retina acts as a screen to these objects, forming images. Yes, children. Okay, so the distance between the eye lens and the retina in our eye is 2.5 centimeters, children. Remember this. The distance between the lens and the retina in our eye is 2.5 centimeters. So whatever object we are looking at, whether it is far away or very close to our eyes, what our eyes are trying to do is, what the ciliary muscles are trying to do is, they are trying to keep this distance, keep the distance between the eye lens and retina as constant, that is 2.5 centimeters. Okay, children? Now let us move to the power of accommodation. Power of accommodation is nothing but what we have discussed about the ciliary muscles here. The eye lens is in the shape of a convex lens or a converging lens. In the relaxed state, the focal length of our eye lens is 2.5 centimeters. Okay, children? Relaxed state is you're not straining your eyes to see something. Okay, suppose there is an object at a comfortable distance. You're able to see it comfortably without straining your eyes, either making it bigger or making it smaller. Then that is the relaxed state of your eye. In the relaxed state, the focal length of our eyes is 2.5 centimeters. That is nothing but the distance between our eye lens and retina. If the object is very close to the eye, the focal length of the eye lens is adjusted by the action of the ciliary muscles. Okay, children? So here what is happening? If the object is very close to us, try reading the textbook, putting your textbook very close to your eyes. Obviously, what you're doing, you are shortening your focal length of the eyes. Okay, you are closing your eyes. Okay, almost closing your eyes. Yes, children. So that is because of the action of the ciliary muscles. Okay, the focal length of the eye lens is adjusted or reduced by the action of the ciliary muscles. So the shape and the focal length of the eye lens is adjusted by the action of the ciliary muscles. Yes, children, the shape and the focal length of the eye lens is adjusted by the action of the ciliary muscles. This property of the eye is called as the power of accommodation. Okay, children, this is called as the power of accommodation. Understood, children? What is the power of accommodation? This is the ability of the ciliary muscles to control the focal length of our eye lens. Okay, the ability of the ciliary muscles to control the focal length of our eye lens. Okay, that is called as the power of accommodation. The closest distance for which the lens can focus light on the retina is called the least distance of distinct vision. Children, you have learned about this in your lower classes also. The closest distance for which the lens can focus light on the retina. Okay, children? This is the minimum distance to which you have to keep the object away from your eyes. Sorry, that is the maximum distance. That is, standard value is 25 centimeters, average value. That is, if you're trying to read a book, you know that you cannot read the book clearly putting it very close to your eyes. Yes or no, children? It is very difficult. Okay? At a certain distance, you will be able to read it clearly. Okay? At a certain distance, you are able to read it clearly. Before that, lesser than that value, you are not able to read it clearly. So this distance where you can, from where you can read the book clearly or see the object clearly is called as the least distance of distinct vision. For a normal eye, it is 25 centimeters. Okay, children, whatever may be the care that we have taken, there will be some defects in some people where they are unable to see properly. Okay, children, they have some issues with their eyesight. So these are called as the defects in vision. The reason can be anything, children. Defects in vision have various reasons. And the most common defects are, any guesses, children? What are the problems you might have seen in your homes, yourself? Anybody wearing spectacles? Have you ever tried to talk to them? What is the problem? Most commonly, your classmates or yourself, if you are wearing a spectacle, you cannot see the board clearly. Yes, children, you cannot see the board clearly. Or if there is an elderly person inside in your home, you know the complaint. They cannot identify a person coming from far off place. Or some people, they cannot identify a person standing close to them. Yes, children? So there are different kinds of defects in vision. The first one is myopia or nearsightedness. Then we have hypermetropia or farsightedness. Then we have presbyopia and astigmatism. Children, these are the 4 common defects in vision. Now let us try to understand them one by one. First, let us see myopia. What happens in myopia? See, children, light is coming from outside and For a healthy eye, it should be focusing on the retina. The light should be focusing on the retina. But what we are seeing here, the light is focused or the image is focused in front of the retina only. So in this case, can you get a clear image? Can you see a clear image? No, the image may appear to be blurred. Okay. Actually, this point should be here on the retina. The image should be focused on retina. Okay. But it is converging in front of the retina only. Okay, children. This defect is called as myopia. If the light from a distant object is converged in front of the retina, then image appears to be blurred. People with this problem can see only nearby objects but not far away objects. So this defect is called as myopia or nearsightedness. Now, how can we correct myopia? The myopic eye is producing too much of convergence. Yes or no, children? Too much of convergence, which the light rays are bending more, converging more than it is required. Actually, they should be converging at this point, but they're converging in front of the retina before only. Okay. So in order to encounter this convergence, more convergence, we have to compensate this with a diverging lens. Okay, children, we have to compensate this with a diverging lens. See, children, this is a diverging lens, and by the use of diverging lens, this problem can be rectified. Okay, children, by the use of a diverging lens or a concave lens, this problem can be rectified. So a concave lens of suitable focal length is used to correct myopia. Now let us move on to hypermetropia. What do we see in hypermetropia, children? In hypermetropia, if you see, the light ray is not converging on the retina also. Yes, children? The light ray is not converging on the retina also. It is going beyond the retina. The image is focused behind the retina. So in this case also, you will not expect a clear image. Yes, children? So if the eye lens focuses the incoming light at a point behind the retina, then the image is again blurred. People with this problem can see the distant objects clearly, but not the nearer ones. Okay? They cannot see the closer objects clearly, but they can see the faraway objects very, very clearly. This defect is called hypermetropia or farsightedness. Now let us see how we can correct hypermetropia. See, children, what do you understand here? These light rays should have been focused here. Yes, children, but they are not focusing here. They are going beyond the retina. They are going beyond the retina. That means there is some problem with the convergence of this lens. That is, we need another converging lens to rectify this problem. Okay, a converging lens or a convex lens of suitable focal length will rectify this problem. So hypermetropic eye produces too much of divergence. Okay, it produces too much of divergence. To compensate this, a converging lens is used as a correction. That is, a convex lens of suitable focal length is used to correct hypermetropia. Yes, children, let us move on to presbyopia now. Presbyopia usually occurs in the old age people. Okay, children, it is almost similar to hypermetropia, but the reason is different here. Presbyopia occurs due to the weakening of the ciliary muscles. As people grow old, the strength of the muscles gradually decreases. Yes, children? So even ciliary muscles being a part of the muscular system, even they will be losing their strength. So as the muscles are getting weak, the of the eye also weakens gradually. For an elderly person, the least distance of distinct vision may increase up to 200 centimeters. Okay, children. For our normal eye, it is 25 centimeters, but for an elderly people, it can be 200 centimeters. This defect, which arises due to aging, is called as presbyopia. Okay, children? This arises due to the weakening of ciliary muscles due to old age. Due to old age, it is called as presbyopia, and it is corrected by using a converging and or a convex lens. The next type is called as the astigmatism. Astigmatism is a problem for people who do not have a spherical cornea. Okay, some people have a non-spherical cornea. It may be a little bit elongated. Okay, not exactly spherical, but it may be a little bit elongated in the vertical axis. Okay, it may be, see children, if it is a perfect sphere, it may be a little bit elongated in the vertical axis. So when the cornea is non-spherical, then the problem of astigmatism may arise. These people usually have a problem seeing the grids or mesh. For them, if they focus on the horizontal wire, then the vertical wires appear to be distorted, okay, and vice versa. So they can focus on any one at one time. If they are focusing on the horizontal wire, then the vertical wires appear to be out of shape for them. And if they are observing or focusing on the vertical wires, then the horizontal wires appear to be distorted for them. So this is treated by using a cylindrical lens. Okay, children. So these were the different defects in vision that we have studied. Okay. Now let us go for our next topic, that is the microscope. Okay, children. What is a microscope? What do we use it for? The name itself says micro means small, very, very small. Scope, seeing. Okay. Scope means to see. So microscope is a device to observe small objects. Microscope is a device to observe small objects. So a simple microscope is a simple magnifier. It is nothing but our magnifying glass, children. A simple microscope is our magnifying glass. It is a converging lens of a small focal length. Okay. So how do we use a magnifying glass, children? You keep it close to the object as well as you keep it close to the eye. Yes or no? The magnifying glass is held such that it is kept close to the object as well as close to the eye. So the lens is held close to the object and eye is also positioned close to the lens. So this gives an erect and magnified image. See here, children. We know this condition, yes or no? When the object is placed within the focus of the lens, when the object is placed within the focus of the lens, then we get a virtual image of the object which is erected and enlarged. Okay? An erected and enlarged image of the object is seen. Okay? So the idea is to form the image at D, that is the least distance of distinct vision for a comfortable view. So in order to, for our eyes not to get strained, we adjust the lens such that the image forms at D. So the image distance is D here. Okay, children? Theta O is the angle subtended by the object, at our eye. Now suppose we have kept the object on the focus. What will happen? We know when the object is on focus, then the image forms at infinity. Actually, the image at infinity is more comfortable to observe. Okay? The image at infinity is more comfortable to observe because it does not give any stress to our eyes, children. Okay? Here, theta I is the angle subtended by the image. This is the ray for the image at our eye. So the magnification, we have two situations here. The image forming at D and the image forming at infinity. So let us see the magnification first when the image forms at D. We know the formula for magnification is V by U. Okay. Now in the place of U, if I write 1 by V minus 1 by F. In the place of 1 by U, I am writing 1 by V minus 1 by F. So I can write M is equal to V by U is equals to V into 1 by V minus 1 by F. Okay, children? Now, if you take this V inside, what will happen? V and V will cancel. It will become 1 minus, it will become V into 1, V by F. So, magnification is equals to 1 minus V by F. But according to sign convention, we know V is negative. Why, children? Because it is in the opposite direction of the incident ray. So therefore V is negative, and numerically it is equal to D, the least distance of distinct vision. So on substituting of minus D here, we have M is equal to 1 plus D by F. Children, this is the linear magnification for a simple microscope when the image forms at D. Okay, when the image forms at D. Now, what happens to the magnification when the image forms at infinity? Let us see, children. H is the height of the object. The maximum angle subtended by the object when it is placed at D. So, when the object is placed at D, then when the object is placed at D, then it subtends the maximum angle at the I. So we are taking theta O is the angle by the object. So tan theta O is equals to H by D, where H is the height of the object and D is the distance separating the object and the observer. This is equals to, if it is a very small angle, then we can neglect tan, then it is theta O is equal to H by D. We already know the formula for linear magnification by a convex lens, children. It is M is equals to H dash by H is equal to V by U, where H dash is the height of the image, H is the height of the object, V is the image distance, and U is the object distance. So the angle subtended by the image is obtained as tan theta I is equals to H dash by minus V, H dash by minus V, where H is the height of the image and V is the image distance. Minus taken because it is in the opposite direction of the incident ray. Now, by using the formula H dash by H is equal to V by U, we can say, we can rewrite this as H by minus V into V by U. This is equals to H by minus U, which is equals to the angle of the angle subtended by the image at the eye. Here, when is this condition? When does the image form at infinity? When the object is at minus F. Okay, children? If you want the image to form at infinity, then the object should be placed at minus F. So this is the angle subtended by the object when it is kept at minus F. So therefore, we get theta I is equals to H by F. Instead of minus U here, we got H by F. And the angular magnification is given by M is equal to theta I by theta O. So we know these two values, theta I is H by F and theta O we got as H by D. Substituting these two values here, we get magnification as D by F. So children, what is the difference between the two magnifications that we got? For the linear magnification at image distance D, we got 1 plus D by F, and for this one, when the image forms at infinity, we are getting only D by F. That means the magnification when the image forms at infinity is 1 less compared to the previous case. But why do we prefer it? It is suitable for a relaxed view of the image. Okay, children? This is a simple microscope. Children, a simple microscope gives us a magnification which is less than or equal to 9. You cannot expect more than that. Okay, children? But we may need more powerful microscope, okay, to observe very small objects, very small organisms, microorganisms. We make use of a more powerful microscope, which is called as the microscope. You can see here, this is the compound microscope. Children, in a compound microscope, we have two lenses, the objective and the eyepiece. Objective is the lens which is near the object, which observes the object, and eyepiece is the lens which is near the eye, which is near the observer. Okay, children? Now here, the object is placed at a certain distance, probably between F and C, and the image is formed. The image is formed at a certain place. Okay, children? What type of image is forming? The image is enlarged, the image is inverted and real. Okay, it is enlarged and inverted more importantly. Okay, so you can assume here it is between F and C, and here it is beyond C of the first lens. Okay, children, this lens, this image formed due to the objective acts as object to the eyepiece. Okay, children, the image formed due to the objective acts as object to the eyepiece, and this is falling within the focus of the eyepiece. The image here is falling within the focus of the eyepiece. Hence, the eyepiece forms a virtual image of the first image. Okay, it forms a virtual image of the first image. Now just look at the size of the final image compared to the object. Very, very, very magnified. Yes or no, children? It is very much magnified compared to the actual size of the object. Okay, children? Now here we have to understand few things. Here we have angle beta. Angle beta is the angle subtended by the image by the to the eye. Okay, children, and we have something called as the tube length, children. Here the tube length is the distance between the first focus, the second focus of the first lens to the first focus of the eyepiece. This is called as a tube length, children. The second focus of the objective to the first focus of the eyepiece. Okay, children. So you can see a compound microscope is able to form such a magnified image of such a small object. The magnification due to the objective is m is equals to h dash by h, where h dash is the height of the image and h is the height of the object. This comes out as L by FO. This comes out as L by FO. Here h dash is the height of the image, h is the height of the object, L is the tube length, FO is the focal length of the objective. In a compound microscope, the eyepiece is larger than the objective. Children, this is an antique compound microscope that was used some years ago. Now the angular magnification due to the eyepiece is 1 plus d by Fe. That is, if the image forms at d, then it is 1 plus d by Fe. And if the final image forms at infinity, then Me is equals to d by Fe. We are using the same formula as a simple microscope because we are considering the eyepiece as one single lens. Okay, we are considering eyepiece as a one single lens. Therefore, the magnification due to the eyepiece is given by 1 plus d by Fe, and if the image forms at infinity, then it is equal to d by Fe. Therefore, the total magnification, the combination of the two lenses, is given by MO into ME, which is equals to L by FO into d by Fe. Once again, children, the total magnification by a compound microscope is given by M is equals to MO into ME is equal to L by FO into d by Fe. Children, this is the magnification due to a compound microscope. The main concept. Now let us go for the telescope. Children, here we are seeing the schematic diagram, ray diagram for a telescope in general. In the telescope, we are having a small eyepiece and a large objective. We are having a small eyepiece and a large objective. Okay. We are taking a large objective, children, because a telescope is used to observe large distance objects. Okay. We are seeing objects which are very, very far away from us. So we need an objective which can cover a wider area. Okay, children. We need an objective which will cover a wider area, a greater area. Okay. So for this reason, we have the objective larger than the eyepiece. Okay, children? So here once again, if you see, light rays are coming from infinity. The light rays are coming from infinity. They are forming an image, an inverted image. Okay, and this is within the focus of the eyepiece. So it is forming a virtual image. It is forming a virtual image. Okay, children? So here FO is the focal length of the objective and FE is the focal length of the eyepiece. You can see here, children, there are angles here. Alpha. Alpha is the angle subtended by the object at the eye, and beta is the angle subtended by the image at the eye. Okay, children? The telescope is used to observe the distant objects. Telescope is used to observe the distant objects. The objective has a larger focal length than the eyepiece. You can see here, children, this is the objective part, which is focused above, and this is the eyepiece part, very, very small. Yes or no, children? Very, very small. Alpha is the angle subtended by the object, and beta is the angle subtended by the final image. So according to the angular magnification formula, m is equals to beta by alpha. On calculation, we have FO by FE. Okay, children? The magnification due to a telescope is given by FO by FE. The length of the tube for a telescope is given by FO plus FE. Okay, children? The length of the tube for a telescope is given by FO plus FE. This is a terrestrial telescope, children. Okay? See, there are different types of telescopes. Basically, the astronomical telescope and the terrestrial telescope. The astronomical telescope is used to observe objects in the sky. Okay, so all of them are mostly spherical in shape. Yes, children. So even if it is an inverted image, it doesn't matter. But for observing a object on Earth, we need a terrestrial telescope which makes use of an extra lens. So that the final image is erected. Okay, children, the final image is erected. So, children, if you have seen the Bahubali movie, Ballal Deva has made use of a telescope to see Devasena and the junior Bahubali coming towards him. Do you remember that scene, children? His father helps him in inserting lens in between so that he can get a clear view of the enemy coming from the front. Yes, children, that's a telescope. So we have 3 lenses in a terrestrial telescope, and these days a reflecting telescope is used instead of making use of so many lenses. Okay, why? Because, children, when we are making astronomical telescopes, to make them more and more powerful, we have to make the objective bigger and bigger. Okay, for the telescope to work properly or give a very good image or to absorb more amount of images, the objective has to be bigger and bigger. How much bigger can it get? It is so difficult to mount a very big objective lens, to handle it mechanically, to give it a mechanical support, to give the edges a proper support. It is very difficult. So instead of using a lens in the objective, a concave mirror is used as the objective. Okay, so instead of a convex lens, we have a concave mirror which is used in the reflecting telescope. Okay, children, so it makes use of a concave mirror. The advantage is that unlike in the lens, there is no chromatic aberration. Chromatic aberration means in the use of lens, because refraction takes place, there may be different changes in colors. The actual color may not be seen. We may be seeing different colors. Okay, but a mirror does not give chromatic aberration. Okay, there are no defects in colors. Okay, so mirror does not give us chromatic aberration. If a parabolic reflecting surface is taken, then the spherical aberration is also removed. Spherical aberration means objects which are straight also appear to be circular. Okay, so this is a spherical aberration. It will also be removed. Less mechanical support. A concave mirror needs lesser support as compared to the big objectives. Okay, children? Children, this is a schematic diagram of a Cassegrain telescope, what we call as a Cassegrain telescope. Children, these are the objective mirrors. Yes, children, these are the objective mirrors which are concave shaped. Okay, these are the objective mirrors, concave shaped. Light incident on the concave mirror is incident on a convex mirror here. Okay, on a convex mirror here, and it is observed at the eyepiece. Okay, children, it is observed at the eyepiece. Okay, the observer observes it from here. This is the working of a simple working of a reflecting telescope. Okay, children. So I hope you have understood the working of the different optical instruments. Now let us see what we have learned in today's session. Rainbows formed can be primary and secondary. Primary rainbows are formed by a three-step process: dispersion, reflection, and refraction. The primary rainbow is bright and appears between 40 degrees to 42 degrees. Secondary rainbows are dim. They are faint. They are formed by a four-step process with an additional reflection. And then we have learnt about the defects in vision: myopia, hypermetropia, presbyopia, and astigmatism. Then we have learnt about the microscope. It consists of a single converging lens of small focal length, which gives an erected enlarged image. The magnification produced due to this is m is equal to 1 plus d by f. The compound microscope uses two lenses, the objective and the eyepiece. In this, the focal length of eyepiece is larger than the objective. The focal length of the eyepiece is larger than the objective. We have learned the magnification by a compound microscope is m is equals to mo into me is equal to L by fo into d by fe. And the telescope makes use of a large objective and small eyepiece. We have learnt about the magnification of a telescope, where the telescope makes use of a large objective and a small eyepiece. Its magnification is fo by fe. Okay, where fo is the focal length of the objective and fe is the focal length of the eyepiece. So children, based upon today's class, let us see some questions that you need to answer. What is myopia? How can it be corrected? What is hypermetropia? How can it be corrected? Explain the formation of a rainbow. With a neat labeled diagram, explain the formation of image in a simple microscope. Draw a neat labeled diagram of a compound microscope and explain its working. Derive an expression for its magnification. This question can be taken as important, children. The focal length of the objective and eyepiece of a compound microscope are 4 cm and 6 cm respectively. I have given you FO and FE. Okay. If an object is placed at a distance of 6 centimeters from the objective, what is the magnification produced by the microscope? Okay, children, try to solve this problem and answer the questions that are given to you. I hope you all have understood this session, which concludes the second chapter for us. Thank you, children.
Thank you, madam, for the detailed session on various optical instruments like a telescope and microscope, and about various defects of eye, and an interesting topic about how a rainbow is formed. Thank you very much for the detailed explanation, children. Hope you have understood it. Try to solve the whatever the questions that are given and the numerical problems that were given. I think only one numerical is given. Please post your whatever the solution of the numerical problem in the chat box. Madam will be ready to clear your doubts and verify whatever you have posted, the solutions also. She will be ready to guide you in all aspects. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much for the detailed explanation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.